Israel. Israel is the one that is consuming all the water from the Sea of Galilee. And so Gog and Magog have to be located in Israel now. Who in Israel is responsible for the drinking of the water? This massive consumption of water. Before we can identify who is responsible, we have to ask, who is using that water? Where is the water being used? And the answer, it is not in agriculture as much as it is in industry. The industrial economy is the major consumer of water. And secondly, the policy of making the deserts green. If you want to make a desert green, you better have a lot of water. Now, who is responsible for the industrial economy in Egypt, in Israel? Who is responsible for the policy of making the deserts green? The answer is the government of Israel. Who are the government of Israel? The answer is the European Jew, not Banu Israel. Banu Israel will be those Jews who were in Yemen, and in Iraq, and in Egypt, and in Morocco, who have a racial affinity with the Arabs. Banu Israel would not be European Jews. And so now it is plain and clear from this hadith that as they pass by the Sea of Galilee, they drink the water, that Gog and Magog are essentially located originally amongst the European Jews of the Khaybar tribe. There's a very interesting book that I like to recommend to you to read. It's called The 13th Tribe. The 13th Tribe. On the internet, you can read the whole thing on the internet. Maybe perhaps use www.13tribe.com and you might find it. Okay. Having identified Gog and Magog, we are now able to understand that it is Europe which is responsible for bringing the Jews back to the Holy Land. But it is a Europe that is the civilization of Gog and Magog. You cannot defeat that civilization. It is a civilization which is constantly expanding, creating carbon copies of itself all around the world. So you have Chinese Gog and Magog now. You have Japanese Gog and Magog now. You have Pakistani Gog, plenty Pakistani Gog and Magog now. You got African Gogs and Magog now. Wherever in the world power now exists, power is now in the hands of the children of Gog and Magog. Around the world. Anytime power is in the hands of those who have righteousness and faith, they will be destroyed. They will not be allowed to keep power. You cannot be a man of faith, and you cannot be righteous in your conduct, and still maintain power in the world. When Gog and Magog are released, they'll sweep you away. And so you cannot establish Islam as state. When you see the Jews brought back to the Holy Land, remember, it is impossible for anyone to establish Islam as a state, as a government, on the face of the earth. You'll be destroyed. You can establish Islam in the periphery, but not in the center. And that Islam will be tolerated so long as it does not threaten the center. When Gog and Magog are released, and the Jews are brought back to the Holy Land, then the awesome drama is now before your eyes. That drama is that the world will give the appearance as though this is the end of history. That there is nothing that could possibly replace those who now control the world. Arnold Toynbee, when he wrote Civilization on Trial in the 1940s, I think, Arnold Toynbee came to that conclusion, that Western civilization has come to stay, All previous civilizations are now footnotes of history, including Islamic civilization. They are now moribund. And there is nothing to say, nothing that can come to replace Western civilization to rule over the world. That was his conclusion. Some 50, 60 years later, Francis Fukuyama wrote The End of History. And Fukuyama came to the same conclusion. The reason is because this is Gog and Magog, and there's nothing which can destroy them. But will they last forever? Will those who control the world today continue to control the world forever? The answer is located in the events which we will now describe in greater detail than we could do last night. We spoke yesterday about Dajjal, that he has to deceive the Jews into believing that he is the true Messiah, when in fact he's the false Messiah. So he has to impersonate the Messiah. Let me do this very rapidly for you now. Since the true Messiah has to rule the world from Jerusalem, the false Messiah has to do the same thing. In order for him to rule the world from Jerusalem, the false Messiah will, number one, have to liberate the Holy Land. That was done in 1919. Already accomplished. Number two, the false Messiah will have to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land. That has already been accomplished. Gog and Magog did that between 1919 and 1948. Number three, the false Messiah will have to establish a state of Israel in the Holy Land and get the Jews to be convinced that this is the Israel of David and of Solomon. May Allah's blessings be upon them both. This has already been accomplished in 1948. The false Messiah will have to get that state of Israel to become the ruling state in the world, and that's why you had September the 11th. September the 11th was meant to be the catalyst which will deliver to Israel the status as the ruling state in the world. The one thing that went wrong on September the 11th for them was that George Bush was not killed. Yes, because life and death is not in the hands of the Israeli Mossad. Life and death is in the hands of the God of Abraham. And so Mr. Bush is still alive. But September the 11th was meant to be the catalyst which will eventually deliver to Israel the status of the ruling state in the world. In order for Israel to become the ruling state in the world, Israel has to wage a big war, which will deliver to Israel the boundaries, the territory which is mentioned in the Torah, that the Holy Land extends from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. And so Israel has to take over Iraq. If Israel has to take over Iraq, you've got to first do what you did in 1980, destroy the Iraqi nuclear power. Number two, you have to do what you did in 1990, the Gulf War, which destroys Iraq's military power. You have to do what you did between 1990 and now. You impose UN Security Council economic sanctions on Iraq so that Iraq is crippled and sent back to the old Stone Age. And you have to do what Mr. Bush wants to do now. He's coming up in the next few months. Deliver the last blow to Iraq so that Iraq will not be able to resist Israel when Israel launches her big attack. And then the territory of the state of Israel dramatically expands. I don't have the time, but there's so much more I could have spoken on this subject. A Muslim response to the attack on America, but we don't have the time. When Israel launches the If Israel has to take over Iraq, you've got to first do what you did in 1980, destroy the Iraqi nuclear power. Number two, you have to do what you did in 1990, the Gulf War, which destroys Iraq's military power. You have to do what you did between 1990 and now. You impose UN Security Council economic sanctions on Iraq so that Iraq is crippled and sent back to the old Stone Age. And you have to do what Mr. Bush wants to do now. He's coming up in the next few months. deliver the last blow to Iraq, so that Iraq will not be able to resist Israel when Israel launches her big attack. And then the territory of the state of Israel dramatically expands. I don't have the time, but there's so much more I could have spoken on this subject, a Muslim response to the attack on America, but we don't have the time. When Israel launches that attack and the territory of the state expands dramatically, then Israel can export the Palestinian population.